Good Friday morning. Thanks for joining us here on Kare 11 News Now. I'm Alicia Lewis. Wolves fans, it is time to get loud. The team is back at Target Center tonight, hoping to redeem themselves from Wednesday's 38-point loss to the Spurs. The Western Conference Semi-Series is now tied 1 apiece. Tip-off is tonight at 8:30. And over in St. Paul, the Frost and the Wild are also back home, hoping to stay alive in the playoffs. Our Audrey Russo is joining us now with the latest.
Sports everywhere. Now, games 3 and 4 of this series here, talking NBA right now, back at the crib. The team Timberwolves posting this on X. You can see right there next to at the crib these photos, all in the last 24 hours. Now, game 3 starts at 8:30, and the hope for fans is that the home court advantage will breathe a little bit of life back into this series. And take a look at this. This is game 2 on the road, where the Wolves endured a 38-point blowout by the San Antonio Spurs. It was the worst loss in their playoff history. The series is now tied 1-1, and with high stakes, of course, comes high ticket prices. When I looked online, courtside seats were priced in the thousands, and the cheapest seats were going for a little more than $100. Now, the Minneapolis Downtown Council, by the way, is encouraging folks with and without tickets to the game to download their Catch Up with Downtown mobile pass. And how it works is you use it to scan QR codes at different businesses, and you'll be entered to win some prizes. And if you can't get enough Minnesota basketball, well, the Lynx are back at home in Target Center. Their home opener has been moved from Sunday to tomorrow at 7 p.m.
Also struggling here to seal the deal are Minnesota Wild. Here they are prepping for game 3 at home against the Colorado Avalanche. That's on Saturday night at 8 p.m. They're down 2-0 in the series, so a loss on Saturday would make a game 4 must-win for them. Their last matchup, by the way, captivated more than 2 million viewers, and according to ESPN, it became the second most viewed second-round game 2 matchup ever on cable. Another news this morning, right now police in Minneapolis are searching for the person who stabbed a man to death. It happened just before 10 yesterday morning on South 10th Street, just blocks away from U.S. Bank Stadium. Police say when they arrived, they found a man dead near an outdoor bench with multiple stab wounds. Investigators are trying to figure out what led to this incident. Anyone with any information should contact NPD. Breaking overnight, more fighting near the Strait of Hormuz as the White House remains optimistic that Iran will soon agree to a deal to end the war. The U.S. is still waiting on Tehran for an update. This is as President Trump, however, is making new threats to the European Union. Chris Pallone is in D.C. with the details.
Overnight, the U.S. and Iran exchanging fire near the Strait of Hormuz, throwing into question the status of the fragile ceasefire between the two nations.
They were firing at us, and we were firing back at them, and our firepower was a hell of a lot stronger than theirs.
President Trump taking reporters on a surprise tour of a federal construction project at the Lincoln Memorial Thursday night. Still optimistic a deal between the two countries to end the war is close.
Could happen any day, and it might not happen, but it could happen any day.
The U.S. waiting for a response from the Iranians on its latest peace proposal, which the president says would require Iran to abandon attempts to obtain a nuclear weapon and turn over nuclear material. At the UN, the U.S. and several Middle East countries backing a resolution condemning Iran for its takeover of the Strait of Hormuz, which saw no ship traffic pass through for a second straight day as a U.S. naval blockade continues.
Iran's indiscriminate mining and tolling efforts in the Strait of Hormuz are textbook violations of international law.
The only viable solution in the Strait of Hormuz is a permanent end to the war, the lifting of maritime blockade, and the restoration of normal passage.
Meanwhile, President Trump is threatening to impose new tariffs on European goods imported to the U.S. if the European Union doesn't agree to a trade deal by the 4th of July. While at the same time, a special federal trade court was ruling against the president's ability to impose certain tariffs.
Nothing surprises me, so we always do it a different way.
The president insisting the ruling won't deter his efforts to impose new tariffs. Chris Pallone, NBC News.
An update this morning on the Hantavirus outbreak. The World Health Organization says it's monitoring several people across the U.S. who were on the cruise ship MV Handies. Now, right now, more than 140 people from 23 countries are still on board. Officials say the ship will dock in Spain's Canary Islands on Sunday, a move that has locals there on edge. The World Health Organization says there's no evidence of a widespread transmission risk.
This is not the start of a COVID pandemic. This is not the same situation we were in 6 years ago. It doesn't spread the same way.
Of course, we understand their concerns, but as I said in my statement, based on the risk assessment that we have, the risk to the people in the Canary Island is actually low.
President Trump is expected to give another update on the outbreak later today. Over at the state capitol, a major bill aimed at fighting fraud is one step closer to the finish line. The House passed a bill creating a statewide office of Inspector General with some changes. The bill now allows the office to set up its own law enforcement division, an amendment that Republicans wanted, but the BCA still will run fraud investigations for the first year like Democrats wanted. The Senate has to pass the bill before it goes to Governor Walz's desk. This morning, a new order demanding Xcel Energy refunds customers more than $40 million after a 2023 Prairie Island power outage. The outage was caused by contractors mistakenly cutting cables, resulting in a 103-day outage. The excess costs were passed directly to customers. Xcel has 30 days to file an update, which must list the refund amount for different customers, calculate interest, and list an estimated refund date. This morning, an update on the man who sprayed a liquid at Representative Ilhan Omar. He's now pleaded guilty to assaulting a United States officer. You might remember the video of showing Anthony Kazmierczak spraying apple cider vinegar on Omar during that town hall meeting. A sentencing date has not been set. He's facing a maximum of 8 years in prison. Developing this morning, the Minneapolis City Council once again rejected reappointing Public Safety Commissioner Todd Barnett. Now it's up to Mayor Jacob Frey whether to veto the vote a second time. The council says they want the mayor to come up with another nominee to avoid going through a never-ending loop of denials and vetoes. The mayor's office called last night's vote, quote, mean-spirited. And next month, the Minneapolis City Council will vote on whether to reappoint Police Chief Brian O'Hara. Right now, it's not clear, though, if he has the votes to pass. Some city council members are raising concerns about MPD overtime and how Operation Metro Surge was handled. Mayor Frey says the chief is still the right person for the job, pointing to progress in police reform, recruitment, and reducing violent crime. He says if the council doesn't support the nomination, they need to be, quote, clear-eyed about the consequences. Right now, people across Minnesota are remembering Joe Sensor, a former Vikings tight end and local sports bar owner. Sensor joined the Vikings in 1979 as a sixth-round pick. In 2 years, he became a Pro Bowler after he had one of the best seasons by a tight end in NFL history. Former KARE 11 anchor Randy Shaver covered Joe when he was a Viking and says he was an even better person off the field.
He was just a very kind person. You know, I think sometimes we say those things when people pass, but I would say that if Joe was standing right here. That's the one thing that I think about when I think about Joe. Just a very kind person, you know, very thoughtful, always thought of others before himself.
Randy says Joe gave back to the community through his chain of restaurants around the Twin Cities. Over the years, he's held several fundraisers for various organizations. Joe Sensor was 69 years old. Well, the unofficial start of summer, the governor's fishing opener is happening tomorrow, and for the first time, it's going to be held at the St. Croix River in Stillwater. The opener's been a Minnesota tradition since 1948, helping kick off the summer tourism season and highlighting just how important fishing is to the state's economy. The DNR says more than 500,000 anglers are expected to take part across Minnesota this weekend. They also have a few pointers for those heading out.
With this chilly evenings and stuff we've been having, the water temps are going to be pretty cool. Because of that colder water temperatures, I think anglers really want to focus on probably places where the water is going to be a little warmer. That might be the downwind side of the lake where the warmer water is being blown across the surface and ending up down there. A lot of times that's where the fish are going to be congregated.
If you're heading out, be safe and have a lot of fun. And be sure to stick with us. More news and weather coming up after the break.